guys is what the heck you're doing. You're changing the industry completely. So introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to talk about your company. Then I have a series of questions that I have pre-prepared, and I see Mark back there who's more intelligent than I am, and he'll ask some really good questions.
Okay, so my name is Scott Blakeman, and I am the Vice President of Client Success and Security Solutions for Elite Interactive. We're a remote guarding company based in Los Angeles, and I've been in the security industry for 25, 30 years or so as I age myself. I did come out of the man guarding industry with Allied before I came into the technology side, if you will, and have found the grass very much greener on the other side. So I'm enjoying it, and we'll obviously get into that. Rich.
My name is Rich Niven. I'm a retired law enforcement officer from Oakland Police on the other side of the bay. Retired there as a lieutenant. Very busy city, as you know, and so my experience as far as response to alarms is kind of from the other side of it. And currently I am one of the retired cops that helps the lead out on an advisory board. So we'll explain a little bit more about that as we go on.
Listen, thanks. Hey, and I also want to make it clear, we are among friends today. Okay, so you just interrupt anytime you have a question, because you're more important than the moderator. So really want your comments. I find what you guys do extremely exciting, but I also get totally confused. Okay, it's a confusing space. Is it a camera on a pole? Is it intervention? Is it automated talk down? So, and I wrote down some questions to get me started. So, how does it differ? How does video verification or other video security differ from what you guys do? And when I say you guys, you're representing kind of not only Elite, but also what the industry is doing, what you're doing.
Sure.
So tell me how the difference, because I get confused.
Well, let's just start out. So what is video verification? As a general rule, video verification is when something happens on a camera, not necessarily knowing what it is, but generally what we've seen is it's any kind of motion. It's a change in pixels of some kind that creates an alert or an alarm, and then somebody comes on live, an agent or an operator, to see what's going on. Now, that's great because they're getting the alert, they're seeing something. The problem with this is that 99% of the time with video verification, what they're looking at is a false positive. And the reason I say that, when I talk about, pixels moving and just anything moving, if the wind blows, if a piece of litter gets blown across a parking lot, if a cat, runs across a driveway, all of those things are going to trigger alerts. And it really becomes the boy that cried the wolf in those scenarios, because at that point, you've got operators that 99% of the time, they're going to pull it up, it's nothing, and so they are much more apt to quickly dismiss events because the majority of the time it's false. The differentiation in true remote guarding and what we do is that it is A, proactive, and I'll talk about that. B, you have analytics and artificial intelligence and so forth that are looking at what's in the frame and then making a more educated decision whether or not they want to create an alert for that. So just take that one step further and I'll stop. In the case of my organization, we're specifically looking generally for people and vehicles. Those are two common things that you need generally for a crime to occur. They've got to pull up on a vehicle of some kind, or they're walking, but there's got to be a person and or a vehicle for it to happen. So we specifically tell our analytics, that's what we want to know about. We're looking for, single people, groups of people, people on bicycles, It could be any kind of a vehicle and so forth. And then we take all of the programming, analytics, and so forth, and are actually programming it from that point so that we're getting alerts based on only the things that we want.
So before we move to Rich from a law enforcement perspective, I've always been interested in the cost savings that a business can, the real cost savings. How many of you are members of ASIS? Any CPPs in the room? Thank you, sir. Appreciate what you do. That's very, very tough. And CPP, Certified Protection Professional, they have a calculation that you can use to determine the cost of a crime post-event, right? So I want to talk about pre-event. How much, and then I'll answer my own little post-event deal, and then we're going to go to law enforcement. So how much can a business save, which is tough because of man hours, guard hours. We say man hours, could be man or women, but in the industry they say man hours.
Right.
How many man hours can save or augment? What's the cost differentiator? What's the ROI?
So generally, if we are switching out one for one in those instances, it's generally between 40 and 50% savings from
Over man.
over a man guard.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then the other thing that we see a lot of is where an organization may not want to get rid of all of their man guards. They're looking to get more efficient, and then we come in as a force multiplier. So if you've got one guard that may be, at the front desk, and he's got a couple of cameras, and then you've got a couple of rovers, we would say, hey, you could eliminate those rovers, and we can basically watch the perimeter and all of the other areas, and then feed that intelligence in to your boots on the ground to then handle any issues depending on the severity. Obviously, if there's weapons and things like that, we're calling in reinforcements and law enforcement.
Yeah, and I think the next statistic that you're in, and I hate to say your industry, but I'm going to say it that way, right? Your industry needs to do is to let them know what are the other real costs involved that a CPP can help you with, because they can determine, hey, when you have a crime like this, it impacts the rest of your employees who are coming to work. Okay, let's get to the law enforcement question. Cops are pretty damn cynical. We know that, right? Lieutenant? They're pretty cynical, right? Because they've seen it all. How long did it take, or how long does it take law enforcement to really get it that this is the real deal, that it's really working?
Well, all you have to do is really see it once, because it eliminates false alarms. And that's the most obvious reason. My city, Oakland, got to the point where we weren't responding to ringers, is what we call them, without any additional information. It started off as certain homes were known as nuisances, and they would get notifications that their alarms were going off all the time. So with the remote guarding, the police aren't going to get a call unless there's actually a crime in progress. And then to the fact you stated earlier, 96% of the time they're not even going to get a call even if there is something's about to happen, because the crime's been thwarted by a voice down, which is very specific because it's not an automated. They realize it's not an automated voice telling them that you're on camera, because the operator can call them out by what they're wearing. Hey, you in the black hoodie and the blue jeans and the white tennis shoes, see you. If you don't leave right now, we're calling the police. So, and we go a little further. If the police do respond, the operator is able to stay on camera, live feed, and relay information to the dispatcher, which the officer is going to like from a safety standpoint. That, okay, we're going to direct you exactly to where this person is. We're going to tell you if they have weapons or not. We're going to tell you what type of crime they're committing, which is going to control the response. So if it's graffiti, we're going there, regular speed, but okay, now he's beating someone up. Okay, now lights and sirens. So we know specifically what's going on, what the individual, the threat they pose to us, and which is mitigated by the operator's information is being relayed to the officer en route.
Okay, thank you. So let's get back to basics. I'm Kirk Alarm. and I want to offer the service. I'm afraid that I'm going to over-promise and under-deliver to the subscriber. Right? I'm going to say, we're going to catch it, we're going to do this. How does an integrator position themselves correctly to work with a company such as Elite?
Yeah, it would be through a channel partnership. And, if we had Kirk Alarm, you've got a great integration business, you're putting cameras up, people are smart these days, they know what's going on, there's a lot of, consumer grade solutions out there that seem kind of similar, and so absolutely people are asking for that. The big issue is Kirk Alarm going to be able to build out a full video monitoring SOC, which is a very different endeavor than building a central alarm station. There's a lot more that's involved. And what the operators and agents are doing and responsible for is more involved. And we can take it into some other pieces down, but really what it's going to do is you're going to have a company that has already spent the last 15 to 20 years figuring out how to build a remote guarding SOC, and then you can have them basically do the back end and power all of that monitoring and reporting and pass it through. As I'm providing you the service, this is the vendor I'm using behind, or the partner that I'm using behind, in order to power that solution.
What about forensic site design? Do you guys participate with Kirk Alarm, which is fictitious, so nobody report me to the state of California? Do you work with Kirk Alarm to do a forensic to help me specify and spec this job?
Absolutely, and the reason behind that, Kirk Alarm may be an expert in camera integration and setting up overall surveillance. The difference is, we're not just trying to surveil, we are looking at it through the lens of detection. So when we are placing cameras, we need to make sure those are placed not just to get the largest swath of area that we're covering, but to get specific alerts to if an individual person walks into this area or zone, is there longer than a specified time. I want anybody that's there longer than 5 seconds. So they're not just walking through, they've begun a loitering process. That's what we want to know. And so we absolutely, I think it's critical that we're involved in that, because once it's designed, then we have to make it work and work effectively. And if we don't have cameras that are placed for the detection, not just the overall views, but the detection, and those are different parameters. Those are angles, those are distances, they can be lighting, it can be a lot of different things. Where a camera may be able to see 300 feet out, really good detection on that camera may only be 150 feet out, right? And so that's very important. I might be able to see what's going on down there, but we're not going to do a great job picking it up, depending on the equipment, of course.
Yeah, if I believe there are two customers here. The first customer is the one that's paying you. The second customer is Rich over there. How do I get to Rich and let him know, hey, we have this new fandangled piece of equipment out here. It's going to save you guys a lot of time and money. I bet you law enforcement hears that all the time. Is that something that Elite helps, or that the company that I choose should help me coordinate that law enforcement? And then Rich, I want to hear from you first. I want to hear from Rich on the back end.
For sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so our company, we have what we call a law enforcement advisory board that's comprised of now retired, in most cases, law enforcement executives that have been around the country. It's led by a gentleman named Tom Stone, who was the executive director of the FBI LEDA, has been a police chief in South Florida, several in Pennsylvania, now I believe is police commissioner in Pennsylvania as well. And we've got others around the country, from the Midwest, Rich here in Northern California, we've got someone in Southern California. So absolutely, and what happens is when we go into a market, not only do we proactively contact that agency and specifically that precinct or area to introduce ourselves, let them know exactly what we will be doing. We then try to set up an on-site meeting as well with whoever the community service officers or any of that are handling that particular area, so that they have a very good understanding of what we do. And I will say, even, and Rich can speak to it more and then I'll be quiet, it's gotten to the point in a lot of the markets where we do a lot of business, the dispatch centers know when they hear this is Agent 152 with Elite Interactive, they know who they're talking to. And then the other piece to it is the vernacular that they're using and the information they're providing. And Rich, I'm sure can talk a lot more about that.
Well, on top of what he just said, there can be a real disconnect between police culture and private security culture. And spending some time with people that know law enforcement on how to train the agents that are viewing and taking the information of what's going on scene and how to relay it to a dispatcher in a very quick, succinct way that they'll understand, rather than having this huge delay due to a lack of translation in between the information they're trying to relay to them. It makes a big difference, and it also helps improve the relationship between your company and the police, because as these calls come out, the police are going to know, okay, this is, in our case, Elite, these guys and gals are squared away. This is a real call. They're giving us professional sounding information, and then the police that arrive on scene are getting this relayed to them on their CADs or MPTs in the car, and when they arrive on scene, they know they've received good information. So that's more on the back end. You're going to build that relationship by every call that you go to being the best possible call and best information they could possibly have. And more on the front end is with our outreach between our advisory board and people we may know in law enforcement. And quite frankly, one of the problems that's going on in law enforcement nowadays is response time, as you're probably all aware. And that's a tough thing to deal with, because it's an uptick in crime. It's a downtick in personnel, and so it's a real struggle. But if we can contact the watch commander and let them know, hey, this information that's coming out from this company is good information, and sometimes we'll have meetings between the client and the local watch commander to express their concerns. So that's having community outreach like that and being, as Scott put it, a liaison between the police agency and your customers is very beneficial.
I've been in this industry for 44 years, and I just picked up on something that we force. This is good. We put in a fire system to have interaction with the fire department. We force it because they have to do the inspection. It's a fire inspector. We force a public agency and a private company to get together. We've not forced that in the law enforcement community. This is cool. We're forcing, now when I say force, that's good. We are facilitating this to occur. Okay, I have, how many of you in the room are currently doing remote guarding? 1, 2, 3. 4? You had to look it up what remote guarding was. I know that was. Okay, so you got 4 of you in the room are doing remote guarding. I want to ask our panelists a question, and then I want to go out to those 4, and you communicate to me. What are the best verticals that you guys see for this? I mean, we know auto dealerships, okay? So let's wipe that one off, because we always know auto dealership.
Yeah, and just very quickly, the only reason auto dealerships are out there, it was kind of the lowest hanging fruit, whereas there are a lot of high value assets unprotected at night. So that just seemed like a natural fit and went that way. We found currently our largest growth is in multifamily housing, commercial and real estate, along with logistics, distribution, and also campuses, houses of worship, and educational institutions. The other thing that I would like to point out for our solution, it works best for more after hours and generally in places where people shouldn't be. If it is a very busy site and they want us to monitor during particular hours, we often will limit that scope to critical infrastructure areas and things like that, because it can be very, very difficult, if you think about a very busy shopping mall,
sure.
to be able to tell who's the bad guy and who's the good guy. My analytics are absolutely going to tell me it's a person. They're absolutely going to tell me how long they've been there. But if there's literally, hundreds of people that are walking back and forth, very difficult to discern right away who that wrong or right person is.
Okay, so let me ask those of you that are doing it, what verticals are you in now? Yes, sir.
Along those same verticals, some of the things I think that you did mention that we're also seeing is construction sites and self-storage facilities. Those are in addition to what you said.
And on the construction sites, are you doing the stick, the what do they call it?
Mobile solution or
thank you.
Mobile trailers.
You're doing mobile trailers, okay. Who else? Yes.
For us, we started maybe with the cannabis industry for the city of Sacramento, maybe the solar fire. But it grew from there. There was into multi-housing, construction sites, car dealerships, kind of just seeing any business that stores outside materials. It's like driving on 99, they're all right, it's really easy to identify what you're going to do. But yeah, there's many verticals for it.
I haven't heard about utility stations. Like
We are currently now working with the LA Department of Water and Power.
Yep.
And covering critical infrastructure again. And like I said, generally places people shouldn't be. So, you do have times when during regular business hours, you've got a lot of comings and going. And they may have folks that, come in for an emergency job or different things like that. But absolutely, we're covering their yards, their offices, and critical infrastructure areas.
We, as part of the association, we do the antitrust, so we've got to be very careful about pricing and talking about that. But I want to talk about strategy, okay, pricing strategy. I want to talk about specific, how to help us understand how Kirk Alarm would charge for this.
So, different companies do this different ways. Some will strictly do a charge per camera. This many cameras, going to cost you this much per camera per month. Others will add an aspect of this many cameras and how many alerts we anticipate getting, and then they'll actually par that up with what they are getting and price it accordingly. Or say, hey, the first 100 alerts are included and we'll start charging you $1 an alert. I'm just using that as a number, $1 an alert after that, and can price it that way. So a lot of different ways to look at it. Because there's equipment involved as well, some are doing subscription type leasing arrangements where they will put all of the equipment, the design, infrastructure, and installation into their pricing and just charge one monthly cost that includes all of those, if you want to call them upfront costs, that one might consider or expect that they're going to incur.
Do you care what camera is out there? Is it your camera or is it any camera that's out there?
My company have some particular suppliers that we have worked with very closely, and we prefer we can use others, but we have designed software and back-end analytics and AI that are working best with particular models and types.
Got it. Sir, I'm sorry.
Aren't the primary analytics in the camera? You're not doing that at a host.
There are on the edge, but then what? Yeah, I'm sorry. Repeat the question one more time.
The analytics, so the question was, did camera matter? The analytics you're using are in the camera, you're not doing it in your knock, you're doing it at the site, right?
Well, there's cameras on there's analytics on the edge, but then actually as that stream comes in, we are then running it through a cloud-based secondary machine learning that is getting that much more accurate. So it's a couple of different layers that it's going through.
Yes, sir.
I just have a comment on the pricing piece. I think people should be very cautious when they're pricing, if they're just doing a flat monthly rate per camera. Depending on your mix of sites, if you have a really noisy site, that could actually be an unprofitable site. And it's compensated, like you have your other sites compensated for that, but you may not ever know. So it's just be mindful if you're doing just a flat fee per camera per month. If you're charging by the number of triggers, then it'll be proportionate. So just be careful of that.
Just with the cap.
With a cap. You know, that's a great point, and we've all heard Tim Wall speak before, right? And there's two people in this industry that can listen to speak like for 8 hours, and Tim Wall's one of them. The other one is Michael Barnes, just for hours and hours and hours. But Tim Wall said something really interesting one time, and big company, right? So let's narrow it down to Kirk Alarm. Look at each account, look at the profitability of each account. ADT would look huge blocks of accounts, right? And maybe even in verticals. But look at each account, and you have to measure the effectiveness, and sometimes you have to fire a client and a customer, right? So, thanks. You guys are being so, you tell me I only have 10 minutes. For those of you that don't know, I'm standing up at 4 o'clock because I need to leave. It's not because I don't love you. I need to be somewhere, so I apologize. So let's do this. Let's open it for questions. Great presentation, guys. It can be a confusing topic. I am so glad that Elite and companies like Elite have really focused in on the law enforcement connection, because they are your biggest asset or your biggest liability, right? You may have chiefs said, no, we don't want that tech on. Well, wait a minute, chief. Look at what we're doing here. Oh, that's not so bad.
I could make one more comment.
Yeah, sure.
Regardless of how high-tech your equipment is and everything you're picking up, at the end of the day, your operator is contacting the police. That's the face of your company. And if they call up with marbles in their mouth and don't know how to put out what's happening to them, or they're not highly trained, it's gonna make you look bad. And your reputation is everything to law enforcement. So the more trained your people are at relaying the information they're seeing and understanding what they're seeing and understanding what crime's being committed and how to succinctly put out descriptions and clearly articulate everything that's going on to the dispatchers they're calling, the better off you're going to be.
And one thing our company has done is we've actually engaged, she is the senior, just recently retired supervisor for LAPD Communication Center. And so we actually bring her in once a month to basically do postmortem on calls, because obviously everything is recorded and so forth. And we go through them, she goes through them with our agents and our SOC management and breaks them down. And hey, you did this really well. If you did this differently, we may have gotten a quicker response. All of those kinds of things to make sure, as I said, the vernacular, what they have ready to go, the physical description, the DOT, all of these things that they care about, that they're not used to the average 911 caller, right, knowing any of this. So when they get somebody that's calling in directly, this is Agent so-and-so with Kirk Alarm, and I've got a crime in progress at this address. It's a Caucasian male, approximately 6 feet, wearing this, blah, 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 had a backpack, walked in on foot. That's a lot of info that I guarantee they're typing it in literally as cars are rolling that way.
Will you say a trespass or burglary or robbery? And the reason why, in California, there's nothing that upsets police officers more than you say, I have a robbery and it's a burglary. There's a difference. Burglaries when no one's home. There's no force or fear used against the victim. A robbery is when force or fear is used, whether that's a real or perceived weapon, right? That's the difference, and it really upsets cops when you, in California, would call it. So what do? Do you say it's a trespass, a burglary, or do you say we have a crime in progress?
Crime in progress. That gets their attention.
Yeah, okay.
What, crime in progress, this person has, hopped the fence, they're trespassing, they're now actively looking into vehicles,
Got it.
trying to gain entry.
It's ongoing communication.
And the one other thing, and
Yeah.
I think you'll like this one little quip that I've got. A really well-trained SOC operator or agent is a first-person witness to a live crime in progress. That's really powerful. If you think about, you've got a trained first-person witness communicating directly with the police department, giving them real-time information on what's happening. The individual's now moving toward the rear of the property to the south. Now they're hiding behind a dumpster. All of those different things, as law enforcement is rolling in, they're just going, yeah, I know where this guy is, and they're going to get to where they are, and obviously a huge safety piece for them.
Jahan, myself, other people, consultants in the industry do work for investors or people that are looking at coming into the space or where to put their money. There is a ton of activity right now in this space. There are a lot of people looking at this space. And they used to, when we'd have these blind calls, they were truly blind. We didn't know who they were. They don't care anymore. They tell us who they are. Hey, I represent a family with $2 billion in assets or $8 billion in assets, and we're looking at doing this. I will tell you that there is a ton of interest in the space right now. Stealth just sold. There's a lot of opportunity right now. So if you plan it correctly now, you can use this as a catalyst to increase the value of your company, whether or not you ever sell or not. That is your decision, right? Okay, let's open up for questions. Mr. Tom.
So I guess just from a law enforcement standpoint, you mentioned the monitoring center operator staying on the phone with the 911 telecommunicator to continue to describe the video. Would there be more value in being able to pipe the video into the 911 telecommunicator so that they'd be able to...
Yeah, that technology exists, and we're looking at several different platforms in which to do that. And Rich, maybe you want to talk about, I know that there's been some tactical concerns as well, depending on where that video is being streamed.
Yeah, in a normal dispatch center, and I'm not up on all the technology, but it seems a little complicated, to be honest with you. And that's one more thing that just, you're in a busy city, dispatchers are already jumbling a lot of different things going on. So to succinctly put out relay what you're seeing to the dispatcher, because this is happening could be a matter of seconds. So.
It's actually a call taker taking, not the dispatcher yet, so they don't really...
Well, it'll be the call taker initially, but it could go, when it becomes a hot crime in progress, it can go to the dispatcher who's putting it out.
Yeah, or often they're working in conjunction. There's one on the phone, and the other is literally listening.
She's relaying the information.
Relaying it all
straight to the dispatcher. Correct.
Straight into the dispatcher. We have sent very regularly stills that will just literally text and or email. So that we absolutely do with a regular basis.
Are you able to get that still all the way to the patrol car?
That's where the tactical comes in. Yes, there's technology out there that can do it, and Avi, you may even have more info on this. There's technology that can do it. I can tell you that some of the members of our law enforcement advisory board have been a little bit concerned. I mean, you could send it to someone's cell phone, and the concern is when the officer gets there, are they looking at the phone? Are they too, concerned about the video versus what's in front of them?
Very easy technically. You can stand with a heads up or heads down and see it to the officer. People have these use cases. I always send it to the officer while he's driving it. But he's got to keep his mind on what he's doing. Not looking
right.
at it. So the use cases seem smart, but when you put them together tactically, it don't matter.
It's not as easy
Plus,
as.
there's also the officer trying to look at a video and see where someone is and then trying to get their sense of direction where when
Just
the
focus in
operator.
your eyes if it's night.
Yeah, and if the operator is in dispatch, or I'm sorry, in the SOC, it's on a map so they can say it's the southwest corner behind a garbage pail can, and that the officer knows directly where to go.
Yeah, one of the things that we also set up is an interactive map that our agents are using that has not only the property, all of the directions, major landmarks and points, but then it's got all the surrounding businesses as well, so that we can specifically relay, now they've gone and are over by Joe's Liquor, right? And so as they're rolling, instead of coming into, I'll just say, Bob Chevrolet, oh no, now they're 2 doors down toward the liquor store, and they're looking for the guy in the black hoodie with the blue jeans, the white shoes, and the backpack, and often that's where they will find them.
Interesting. Thank you very much.